My name's Carl Bowen. I'm a fellow at AMD. I've been doing semiconductor work for over 30 years, and the last few years have been in product engineering, trying to bring yield enhancement methods into the test arena. I'll spend a little bit of time painting the landscape, setting up some background information as we began an engagement with OptimalPlus, and what were some of the factors that were sort of seeding the path that we were trying to move in our decision to build internally and to address specific problems or to purchase an external solution. So this landscape, it's important to identify what problem you're trying to solve. We established this concept or paradigm for yield management, which had 3 dimensions to it. A dimension which is yield forecasting, signal the future, and signal the future to the business units so that they're assessing product cost properly. Second dimension, I'll label the attack dimension. This is the early learning phase of yield management. The third dimension I'll refer to as the protect dimension. The protect dimension is when you've attained some level of maturity, you're starting to flatten out on the yield curve, and now you want to keep from losing the gains that you've realized. This is the area that we identified within AMD as our weak point. And from an offering perspective, this is where OptimalPlus approached us saying, we have solutions to better help you in this protect space. To address this process, we used a 4-stage approach in this engagement with OptimalPlus. We started with a proof of concept. Second stage was a pilot. So we moved to the pilot phase, which meant the proof of concept was successful. So our pilot consisted of 3 test facilities, 4 major products, 3 of them discrete GPU, 1 was an APU. And we covered about 70 testers during this time frame. At the end of the pilot, we go through what we call the decision process. This was where we start making the ROI quantification. Then we moved into the implementation phase, and like I mentioned, this implementation phase was designed to intercept a very specific product ramp. So the outcomes, this is where the money gets interesting. We're currently in 11 test facilities. We have about a little over 400 testers, just under 70 distinct products, a little over 2 million runs, and about 325 million units in the database now. We're averaging about 10 minutes time to portal, and we've got about 100 users within AMD. We defined a custom measure that we refer to as good units per hour because we needed to make sure we were utilizing our testers most effectively. In all 3 cases, both sort 1, sort 2, and final test, we saw substantial gains. We effectively doubled our sort output. A second measure that we identified, we would have never seen this without OptimalPlus, is a metric that we call G2ND, stands for gap to net delta. These plots here are showing, again, wafer sort 1, wafer sort 2, and final test, the improvement in the gap between net and gross test time. These plots are trying to show the actual test time. So the dashed line upper is for product 1, the lower section is product 2. The dashed line is the gross test time, and the solid line is the net test time. So while we were making incremental improvements in our net test time, the biggest bang for the buck, the biggest improvement came from reducing that inefficiency that was hidden under gross test time. With the visibility provided through the business intelligence in OptimalPlus, we were able to quantify how much were we really retesting, which was actually quite a bit more than what our expectation was. And for that retest, where were we getting recovery and where were we not? Again, about a 50% improvement in the amount of time we were spending in retest. Then the last measurable outcome that I want to mention is what's known as yield gap. This is the value of retest, where you're getting some yield recovery through the retest. And so with the visibility we were able to get using the OptimalPlus business intelligence, we're able to isolate or narrow what were the causes or sources for this yield recovery so that we can reduce our dependency on retest in order to sustain our yield. So that was the technical piece of it. There was also a number of best stated cultural or maybe attitude awareness changes that came out of this. Well, we had 3 areas that our thinking changed significantly. With this, we identified there's a lot of opportunity to improve capacity, but without sacrificing quality. The customization piece of the pie, we brought in new perspective, is by forcing things to operate more in an industry standard mode, we are able to leverage learning from other companies. So we're learning things that, whether it's Qualcomm, NVIDIA, Broadcom, the people who were kind of the first adopters, early adopters for OptimalPlus, they're learning things that they're building into the system that we're able to take advantage of because it's a growing knowledge base. There's a number of culture changes, which is just the way we think, in that we move from we know best and our innovation is limited to what we know to what can we learn? Can we look outside and see another way of doing things? And one of the most significant findings that I had was the thinking of we can't afford to do this. And that was really why we had so much trouble making a decision after that pilot phase. But we finally realized or acknowledged that we can't afford to not do this. When you look at the amount of money that you leave on the table over especially a 2 or 3 year horizon, it just makes it very obvious that this is a wise investment to make. And with that, I'll open for questions.